You are not behind because you lack time. You are behind because you keep treating your life like it can be postponed. Your days feel full, but your progress feels thin. Not because you are incapable, but because you have been busy without direction, active without intention. And the cost is quiet. It shows up as frustration, self-doubt, and the sense that something valuable is slipping through your hands without you knowing how. Most people say they want to change their life. Very few stop to ask one uncomfortable question. Am I actually treating my own life like it matters? This is not about hype, not about hustle. This is about a private decision to stop taking your time, your energy, and your potential lightly. Because the moment you start showing up for yourself with real commitment, something shifts. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop drifting. You stop living like you have unlimited chances. You start living like your choices carry weight. Taking yourself seriously does not mean becoming perfect or extreme. It means accepting a simple truth. Your life is real. Your habits are real. And the way you spend your days is shaping who you become. Every morning, you are given 3 things: time, energy, and attention. How you use them determines the direction of your life. Attention may feel invisible, but it is not nothing. It is your life force. Whatever you focus on consistently grows, first in your mind, then in your behavior, then in your results. Your brain rewires itself through repetition. What you practice strengthens. What you neglect weakens. This is not motivation. It is structure. And life responds the same way. Not to your wishes, but to your standards. Not to what you say you want, but to what you tolerate and repeat when no one is watching. When you take yourself seriously, your signal changes. You stop waiting for motivation. You understand this. Motivation follows decision, not the other way around. You decide your goals are not jokes. Your time is not cheap. Your future is not someone else's responsibility. This audiobook is not asking you to change everything today. It is asking you to stop living casually. Because the day you do, your life begins to move, not by accident, but by choice. If this message already speaks to you like the video, it helps YouTube recognize what truly matters to your mind. Subscribe so you don't miss the next layer of this journey. And stay until the end. The final moments always carry the quietest power. Chapter 1. Success begins the day you decide to take yourself seriously. Not someday. Not when conditions improve. Not when someone else believes in you. The exact moment you decide your life is not casual is the moment direction appears. Until then, everything feels scattered because nothing has weight. Days blend together. Effort feels optional, and potential stays theoretical. Most people are not held back by lack of talent or opportunity. They are held back because they do not treat their own life as something important. They wake up and move through the day on habit, reacting instead of deciding, responding instead of choosing. They let moods determine effort. They let distraction determine focus. Then they wonder why nothing truly changes. Taking yourself seriously begins with a decision to stop living on autopilot. Autopilot feels safe because it requires no responsibility. You wake up, check your phone, move through tasks, respond to demands, repeat familiar patterns. It feels productive, but it is directionless. The mind prefers autopilot because it conserves energy. But a life run entirely on autopilot slowly drifts away from intention. And drift is dangerous because it feels normal while it quietly pulls you off course. When you decide to take yourself seriously, you interrupt that pattern. You start choosing your actions instead of defaulting to them. You stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" and start asking, "What actually moves my life forward?" That question alone separates growth from stagnation. It shifts you from reaction into leadership, and leadership begins internally. This decision does not make you rigid. It makes you awake. You begin to notice how often you give your best energy away to things that do not matter, and leave your own goals with leftovers. You notice how often you say later, without realizing later is not a plan. Later is avoidance disguised as patience. From a psychological perspective, this decision changes your internal hierarchy. Your brain learns what matters based on repetition. If your goals are constantly postponed, your nervous system stops taking them seriously. It treats them as background noise. But when you act on your intentions consistently, even in small ways, you send a different signal. You tell your brain, "This matters. Pay attention." And attention reorganizes behavior. There is also a deeper layer at work. Every decision you make broadcasts a signal about who you are becoming. When you delay, you reinforce hesitation. When you follow through, you reinforce reliability. Over time, these signals shape identity. Identity is not what you say you are. Identity is what your actions repeatedly confirm. Taking yourself seriously means accepting that your choices are not neutral. Every habit either strengthens or weakens the future you say you want. Staying up late is not just about tonight. It trains your relationship with tomorrow. Skipping practice is not just about missing one session. It teaches your mind that quitting is an option. These patterns accumulate, and eventually, they feel like personality when they are really just habits repeated long enough. This is why most people wait for motivation and never move. Motivation is unreliable because it is emotional. Decision is stable because it is deliberate. When you decide that your life deserves effort regardless of mood, you free yourself from emotional negotiation. You stop arguing with yourself every day. You already decided. That decision creates calm. You no longer need to feel inspired to act. You act because it aligns with who you are choosing to be. This is how discipline forms, not through force, but through clarity. You are not punishing yourself. You are honoring your future. Taking yourself seriously also changes how you experience time. You stop treating days as endless. You recognize that each day carries weight, not pressure, weight, meaning. You begin to ask better questions. Where is my time actually going? Which habits are building me? Which ones are quietly eroding me? Who am I listening to? Who am I ignoring? These questions are not meant to create guilt. They create awareness. And awareness is the first step to control. When you become aware, you stop confusing movement with progress. You realize being busy is not the same as building something. You slow down just enough to aim your effort. You choose fewer actions, but you choose them deliberately. This focus is powerful. Scattered effort weakens outcomes. Focused effort compounds. There is a subtle confidence that begins to form when you take yourself seriously. Not loud confidence. Calm confidence. It comes from knowing you are no longer lying to yourself. From knowing that when you say you will do something, you are increasingly likely to follow through. That trust builds quietly, but it is strong. You also stop waiting to be rescued. You stop hoping someone will notice your potential and unlock your life for you. You realize no one is coming to save you, and that realization is not heavy. It is freeing. It means you are in control of the direction. You may not control every outcome, but you control effort, focus, habits, and attitude. And those shape everything else. Responsibility, when accepted, becomes power. The decision to take yourself seriously does not demand perfection. It demands sincerity. It asks you to stop treating your life like a trial run, to stop postponing your potential, to stop acting as if the real version of your life begins later. It begins now. You do not need to fix everything today. You need to make one decision today that proves your life matters. One action taken with full presence. One habit practiced deliberately. One promise kept. That is how direction is built. Not through dramatic change, but through consistent seriousness applied to ordinary days. When you decide today that your life deserves your attention, everything else starts to organize around that choice. Momentum appears, clarity follows, and growth becomes inevitable. This is the foundation. Everything that follows builds on this single decision. Take yourself seriously, and let today be the first day your actions reflect it. Chapter 2. When you stop taking yourself seriously, life does not collapse all at once. It slowly drifts. Days begin to blur together. You stay busy, but direction fades. You respond to what is urgent instead of building what is important. This is not because you are weak. It is because you are living on autopilot. Autopilot is the default state for most people. It is the mind running on old patterns, familiar habits, and emotional shortcuts. You wake up and react. You check messages. You scroll. You move through tasks without intention. You repeat yesterday because it requires less effort than choosing something new. Autopilot feels efficient, but it is expensive. It costs you awareness. And without awareness, there is no growth. Living on autopilot trains you to accept whatever shows up. Instead of asking where you want to go, you deal with what is in front of you. Instead of designing your day, you survive it. This is how people end up years into a life they never consciously chose. Not because they made one bad decision, but because they made no clear ones at all. Taking yourself seriously means breaking this pattern. It means you stop letting habit run your life without supervision. You begin to notice when you are acting out of default instead of intention. You pause before reacting. You ask, is this choice aligned with the direction I want, or is it just familiar? That pause is powerful. It creates space between impulse and action. And in that space, control returns. From a scientific perspective, autopilot lives in the brain's efficiency system. The mind prefers repetition because repetition saves energy. But what saves energy does not always build a better life. Growth requires conscious effort. It requires directing attention instead of letting it scatter. When you stay in autopilot too long, your brain stops expecting effort from you. It learns that comfort comes first, and progress becomes optional. Breaking autopilot retrains that expectation. Every time you choose deliberately, especially when it would be easier not to, you strengthen the part of your mind responsible for self-direction. You prove to yourself that you are not just reacting to life. You are shaping it. Over time, this shifts how you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who decides. There is also an energetic truth here. Autopilot creates a weak signal. It tells life you are undecided, and indecision produces inconsistent results. When your actions lack intention, your outcomes lack clarity. But when you move with purpose, even small actions carry weight. Your energy becomes coherent, and coherence creates momentum. This is why so many people feel tired without doing anything meaningful. Mental drift is exhausting. Scattered attention drains more energy than focused effort. When you live without intention, your mind is constantly pulled in different directions. Notifications, requests, worries, distractions. Nothing settles, nothing completes. The system stays open. Taking control closes unnecessary loops. You start your day with a plan, even a simple one. You choose one or two actions that actually matter. You stop filling time just to feel productive. You begin finishing things. Completion is grounding. It tells your nervous system that effort leads somewhere. That signal calms anxiety and builds stability. Breaking autopilot also changes how you experience responsibility. Instead of seeing responsibility as pressure, you begin to see it as clarity. You are no longer confused about why you feel stuck. You can trace results back to choices. This is empowering. It means change is possible. If your life is shaped by your actions, then your actions can reshape it. This does not mean controlling everything. It means choosing what you can control and letting go of the rest. You control how you start your day. You control where your attention goes. You control whether you follow through or postpone. These may seem small, but they are foundational. Small choices repeated daily become structure. Structure creates freedom. When you live intentionally, you stop blaming circumstances as much. Not because circumstances disappear, but because you are no longer passive. You become active in your own life. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is the best response right now?" That shift alone changes outcomes. Living without autopilot requires effort at first. Awareness takes energy. Decision takes courage. But once it becomes a habit, life becomes simpler. Not easier. Simpler. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. You stop overthinking because you are acting. And action clears mental noise. Taking yourself seriously means refusing to sleepwalk through your days. It means choosing to be present in your own life, to notice patterns, to interrupt habits that no longer serve you, to design your days instead of escaping them. You are not here to drift. You are here to build something with the time you have been given. And that begins the moment you step out of autopilot and start deciding on purpose. Chapter 3. If your goals truly mattered, your days would look different. This is not criticism, it is observation. Because goals do not respond to intention, they respond to attention. And attention is proven through behavior. What you do daily reveals what you actually value, not what you say you value. A goal that matters shows up on your calendar. It takes up space in your day. It is planned for, protected, and revisited. A goal that never gets time, never gets results. Most people keep their goals mentally, not structurally. They think about them when it feels good. They revisit them when motivation spikes. Then they disappear when effort is required. The goal becomes background noise, something inspirational, but not operational. And when progress stalls, frustration grows. Not because the goal was wrong, but because it was never treated as real. Acting like your goals matter means you stop treating them as optional. Optional things get postponed. Important things get handled. This shift is not emotional. It is behavioral. You stop saying, "I'll work on it when I feel like it," and start saying, "This is scheduled. This is happening." Feelings fluctuate. Commitment does not. When you anchor your goals to time instead of mood, consistency becomes possible. This is where many people get uncomfortable, because acting like your goals matter forces trade-offs. It forces you to admit that time is limited, that saying yes to one thing is saying no to another, that distractions are not neutral. They are choices that compete with what you say you want. When goals matter, you begin to organize your life around them, not squeeze them into leftovers. You decide when you will work. You decide how you will track progress. You decide what needs to be removed to make space. This structure is not restrictive. It is freeing. It removes daily negotiation. You no longer wake up wondering if today will be productive. You already decided. From a cognitive standpoint, this reduces mental load. Decision fatigue disappears when choices are made in advance. Your brain does not have to fight itself every day. It follows the structure you set. This is why structure outperforms motivation. Motivation is unstable. Structure is reliable. There is also a deeper alignment happening. When your actions consistently support your goals, internal conflict fades. You stop feeling like you are betraying yourself. That relief alone creates momentum. Energy that was once wasted on guilt and avoidance becomes available for growth. Acting like your goals matter also changes how you say yes and no. You pause before committing. You ask, does this support what I am building, or does it pull me away? That pause is powerful. Without it, life fills quickly with noise. With it, direction stays intact. You also stop hiding from discomfort. Goals that matter require effort, focus, and patience. When you take them seriously, you accept that some days will feel slow, awkward, or heavy. You stop quitting just because progress feels uncomfortable. You stay with the work long enough to gain skill, and skill removes fear. Progress removes doubt. Many people wait for perfect conditions. They want clarity before action. But clarity is not a prerequisite. It is a result. Clarity comes from movement, from testing, from adjusting. When you act, feedback appears. When you wait, confusion grows. Preparation becomes another signal that your goals matter. You prepare your environment. You remove small obstacles. You set reminders. You leave notes. You make follow-through easier. People who respect their goals do not rely on memory or willpower alone. They build systems that support execution. Standards also rise. You begin to notice when you cut corners, when you give half effort, when you delay without reason. And you correct yourself, not with drama, not with self-hate, but with honesty. You understand that standards shape outcomes. Low standards create average lives. Higher standards create momentum. At the end of the day, you begin to review. Not to judge, but to adjust. You ask, did my actions today move me forward or keep me comfortable? This reflection is not for guilt. It is for clarity, and clarity allows improvement. Another shift occurs when goals matter. You stop oversharing them. You realize not everyone deserves access to what you are building. Some people discourage without intending to. Others distract. When goals matter, you protect them. You share them with those who support action, not just conversation. Big goals are broken into steps. You stop staring at the entire mountain. You focus on the next step. Small steps are manageable. Each completed step builds belief. Belief fuels consistency. Consistency compounds results. Comparison also loses its grip. You stop measuring your pace against others. You measure against yourself, against who you were last month, last year. This keeps motivation clean. Comparison drains energy because it moves attention outward. Progress requires attention inward. When goals truly matter, excuses lose their appeal. You still notice reasons not to act, but you do not give them authority. You work within limits instead of complaining about them. You respect rest, but you no longer confuse rest with avoidance. Rest becomes recovery, and recovery allows you to return with focus. A quiet confidence forms. You begin to trust yourself because you see effort turning into progress. You no longer need constant motivation from outside. Internal proof becomes your fuel. This confidence is stable because it is earned, and earned confidence lasts. The truth is simple. If your goals truly matter, your calendar will show it. Your habits will show it. Your decisions will show it. Results follow evidence, not intention. You do not need to be extreme. You need to be sincere. Sincere effort repeated daily changes lives. When your actions finally match what you say you want, alignment appears. And alignment is powerful. Each day, you are casting votes for the life you are building. When goals matter, you vote with effort. You vote with focus. You vote with patience. Over time, the votes add up. This is how ordinary people build extraordinary lives, not through luck, not through talent alone, but through daily actions that prove their goals are not decoration. They are direction. Chapter 4. Most people believe they lack discipline, when what they actually lack is structure. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, the right moment. And because moods change daily, progress becomes inconsistent. This is why relying on emotion is unreliable. Emotion is weather. Structure is climate. One changes constantly. The other creates stability. When you take yourself seriously, you stop letting feelings decide your behavior. You understand that feelings are information, not instruction. They tell you what is happening inside you, not what you should do next. If you let mood dictate action, your life will rise and fall with emotional fluctuation. That is not freedom. That is instability. Structure removes negotiation. You decide in advance when you will work, when you will rest, and what actions are non-negotiable. This does not make life rigid. It makes it calm. Your mind no longer wastes energy debating with itself. It follows the framework you have already chosen. From a neurological standpoint, this matters more than motivation ever will. Every time you debate whether to act, your brain experiences friction. Friction drains energy. When decisions are made ahead of time, the brain conserves energy and directs it toward execution. This is why people with structure appear more disciplined. They are not stronger. They are simply not arguing with themselves all day. Structure also stabilizes the nervous system. When your days are unpredictable, your body stays on alert. Anxiety grows because nothing feels contained. When you create routines, even simple ones, your system relaxes. It knows what comes next. That calm is not laziness. It is readiness. A regulated system performs better under pressure. This is where many people resist. They confuse structure with restriction. They believe planning will trap them. But the opposite is true. Structure creates freedom by protecting what matters. When you plan your priorities, distractions lose power. You no longer need to react to everything because you already know what deserves your attention. Structure is not about filling every hour. It is about protecting a few. One focused hour is worth more than 10 distracted ones. When you choose a small number of meaningful actions and commit to them, progress becomes visible. Visibility builds belief. Belief sustains consistency. This is also where identity begins to shift. When you show up consistently, regardless of mood, you stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. That identity becomes self-reinforcing. Your actions confirm it daily. Many people confuse commitment with intensity. They believe acting seriously means pushing hard all the time. It does not. It means acting deliberately. Some days require effort. Other days require rest. Structure includes both. Rest without structure becomes avoidance. Structure without rest becomes burnout. Balance is not accidental. It is designed. Another benefit of structure is honesty. When things are planned, Excuses stand out clearly. You no longer hide behind confusion. If something did not get done, you can see why. You adjust instead of judging. This keeps progress clean. No drama, no guilt, just refinement. Structure also creates momentum. Action becomes routine. Routine becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. And identity determines behavior without constant effort. This is why structure feels difficult at first and effortless later. You are building a system that eventually carries you. When you rely on mood, every day feels like a reset. When you rely on structure, progress compounds. There is also an energetic principle at work. Consistency creates coherence. When your actions are aligned day after day, your signal strengthens. Life responds differently to coherence. Opportunities arrive when you are ready, not when you are hoping. Readiness is built through structure. Taking yourself seriously means you stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" and start asking, "Is this aligned with what I'm building?" That question cuts through emotion and points directly to responsibility. Responsibility is not pressure. It is clarity. It simplifies life. You do not need to overhaul everything. Start with one anchor. One habit that happens no matter what. One block of time protected daily. When that anchor holds, everything else organizes around it. This is how discipline grows, quietly, reliably, without force. Structure is not about control. It is about direction. And direction is what turns effort into results. Chapter 5. If you want to change your life, you must start treating your time like it has real value. Not in theory, not in moments of motivation. Every day. Time is not just passing. It is shaping you. Every hour is either building you into someone stronger or quietly pulling you away from the person you want to become. This choice is not made once a year. It is made moment by moment, especially in the hours no one sees. Think about how you treat money. If someone handed you a large sum and said, "Use this wisely," you would pause. You would plan. You would not throw it away casually. But time is more valuable than money, because money can be earned again. Time cannot. Once it moves, it is gone forever. And yet, many people treat time as if it is endless. They spend hours scrolling, overthinking, staying busy without building anything. They say yes to things they do not care about and push off what actually matters. They say their future is important, but their days do not reflect that belief. This creates internal conflict. Not because you are lazy, but because deep down, you know you are not respecting your own time. That is where frustration comes from. When you begin treating your time like it matters, everything shifts. You stop saying, "I'll do it later," so casually. You stop letting other people's priorities automatically outrank your own. You become clear about what actually matters today, not someday. Clarity changes behavior. When you know what matters, cutting out what doesn't becomes easier. There will always be another message, another request, another distraction. That will never stop. What must change is how you respond. No one is coming to manage your time for you. No one is going to protect your future on your behalf. That responsibility belongs to you. And responsibility, again, is power. Treating your time seriously does not mean being busy all day. Being busy is not the same as being intentional. People who value their time do not fill their calendars with noise. They focus. They say no more often. They leave space to think, to reflect, to work deeply on what matters. Choice is where freedom lives. If your time feels scattered, it is not because you are broken. It is because the world is loud. But you do not have to give your life to what is loud. You can look at your day and ask a simple, powerful question. Is this how someone who values their future would spend their time? That question alone can change direction. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to work endlessly. You need to stop wasting the time you already have. One focused hour, used well, can move your life forward more than an entire distracted day. Think about the time already lost to overthinking, procrastinating, waiting for perfect conditions. What would happen if you used even half of that time to take one meaningful action? Progress does not require massive change. It requires honesty about how you spend your hours. When you start protecting your time, some people will not understand. They may say you have changed. That is fine. Growth is not for everyone. Your future does not require permission. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to say, "This matters to me." Do not wait until stress forces you to care. Start now. Look at your habits. How do your mornings begin? Are they rushed and reactive, or intentional and calm? You do not need to wake up extremely early, but you do need to stop giving the first hour of your day to things that give nothing back. Evenings matter too. The way you end your day shapes how you rest, how you recover, and how you show up tomorrow. Do not numb yourself with noise. End your day in a way that builds peace and momentum. Reflect, read, plan the next day. Not because you must, but because your time deserves respect. When you treat time as valuable, you begin to enjoy it more. A deep confidence forms when you know you are not wasting your life. Not because everything is perfect, but because your time and your values are aligned. That alignment removes regret. You do not need more time. You need to be more honest about how you are using the time you already have. You are not too busy. You are just not prioritizing what truly matters yet. And that can change. Even on difficult days, you can make one choice that honors your time. One action that says, "My future still matters." Progress is built this way, not through giant leaps, but through daily decisions to stay aligned. Do not wait for life to force urgency. Decide now that your hours are not cheap, that your attention is not for sale, that your future is not something to gamble with. You have today. You have this moment, and you have more control than you think. Choose your time like it is priceless, because it is. Chapter 6. When you take your life seriously, you learn a difficult truth. You cannot do everything and still do what matters well. This is where the power of saying no begins. Most people believe saying no is selfish. They worry it will disappoint others, create distance, or make them seem unkind. But what actually drains your life is not saying no. It is saying yes to things that quietly pull you away from the future you are trying to build. Every yes costs something. It costs time. It costs energy. It costs attention. And when those resources are limited, spending them without intention becomes expensive. Saying no is not rejection. It is selection. When you choose carefully where your energy goes, you are not closing yourself off from life. You are directing it. You are deciding what gets access to your focus. And focus is your most powerful resource. Without it, effort scatters. With it, even small actions become effective. Many people say yes out of habit. They say yes to avoid discomfort. They say yes because they have not paused long enough to consider the cost. Then they feel overwhelmed, resentful, or exhausted, and they do not understand why. The reason is simple. Their life is being shaped by other people's priorities instead of their own. Taking yourself seriously means interrupting this pattern. You begin to pause before committing. You ask one clear question. Does this support what I am building, or does it pull me away? That pause creates awareness. Awareness creates choice, and choice restores control. From a psychological standpoint, boundaries reduce cognitive overload. When everything feels urgent, your nervous system stays activated. Stress accumulates, focus breaks down. But when you define what matters and protect it, your system relaxes. You are no longer constantly on alert. You know where your energy belongs. This is why people with clear boundaries often appear calm. Not because they have fewer responsibilities, but because their responsibilities are chosen. They are not being pulled in 10 directions at once. They are anchored, and anchoring creates stability. There is also an energetic reality here. When you say yes to things that drain you, you create leaks. Your energy dissipates. When you say no to what does not align, you seal those leaks. Your effort becomes concentrated. Concentrated energy produces results. Diffused energy produces exhaustion. Saying no does not mean isolating yourself. It means being selective. It means understanding that depth creates more value than breadth. A few meaningful commitments handled well will move your life further than many shallow ones handled poorly. This applies to work, relationships, habits, and even thoughts. You do not need to respond to every message. You do not need to attend every invitation. You do not need to engage every distraction. When you stop giving automatic access to your attention, your life becomes quieter. And in that quiet, clarity grows. Boundaries also teach others how to treat you. When you respect your own time, people feel it. You do not need to announce it. Your actions communicate it. You become someone whose time has weight, and people respond differently to that. Not because you demand respect, but because you model it. There will be discomfort at first. Saying no can feel unnatural when you are used to accommodating. But discomfort is temporary. Regret lasts longer. Each time you protect your focus, you strengthen your self-trust. You prove to yourself that your goals are worth defending. That proof builds confidence. You will also notice something important. When you say no to what drains you, you create space for what builds you. Space for learning, space for rest, space for meaningful work, space for thinking. Space is not emptiness. Space is potential. This is how direction is preserved. Life will always offer options. Not all of them deserve a yes. When you take yourself seriously, you stop treating every request as an obligation. You treat it as a decision. And decisions shape destiny. You do not need to explain every number. You do not need to justify your priorities. Your future is reason enough. Protect your energy. Guard your focus. Say no when necessary. Not from fear, not from anger, but from clarity. Because every no that protects your direction is a yes to the life you are building. Chapter 7. Being busy is not the same as building something. This is one of the most dangerous confusions people live with. Days filled with activity can still lead nowhere. Tasks get checked off. Messages get answered. Hours disappear. And yet, nothing meaningful moves forward. The problem is not effort. The problem is direction. When you confuse movement with progress, you exhaust yourself without evolving. Progress requires aim. It requires choosing a small number of actions that actually change your life and giving them your full attention. Busy work feels productive because it creates motion. But motion without intention is just noise. It keeps you occupied while your future waits. Taking yourself seriously means slowing down just enough to aim your effort. You stop filling your day to feel productive. You start choosing work that produces change. This requires honesty. You must look at how you spend your time and ask a difficult question. Which of these actions actually moves me forward, and which ones just keep me comfortable? Comfort is seductive because it feels safe. Busy work often lives in comfort. It is familiar. It is low risk. It allows you to say you are trying without risking failure. But comfort does not create growth. It creates repetition. Growth requires focus. Focus means choosing less, not more. It means accepting that you cannot give full attention to everything. When you try, your effort fragments. Fragmented effort weakens outcomes. Focused effort compounds. From a neurological perspective, attention is the gateway to change. What you repeatedly focus on strengthens neural pathways. When attention jumps constantly, nothing deepens. Skills remain shallow. Progress remains slow. But when attention is sustained, learning accelerates. Confidence builds. Mastery begins. This is why deep work feels uncomfortable at first. Your mind is not used to staying with one thing. It wants novelty. It wants distraction. But distraction is not rest. It is escape. And escape delays progress. When you train yourself to stay with one meaningful task, even when it feels slow, you build a rare skill. The ability to concentrate is becoming scarce, and scarcity creates value. People who move forward consistently are not doing more. They are doing fewer things better. They identify the actions that create leverage and protect time for them. They stop spending their best hours on low-impact tasks. They stop reacting to every request. They choose their priorities in advance. This is not arrogance. It is clarity. When you stop confusing busy with productive, your days feel different. They feel calmer. Not because there is less to do, but because you know why you are doing it. Anxiety drops when effort has direction. You no longer wonder if you are wasting your life. You can see progress, even if it is slow. Progress does not need to be dramatic to be real. Small, consistent steps taken in the right direction will outperform scattered effort every time. This is why people who appear calm often achieve more. Their energy is not split. Their attention is not constantly hijacked. They are present. Being present changes results. When you work fully. When you rest without guilt. You stop living in between, half working, half distracted. That in-between state drains energy and produces little. Presence restores power. This also affects how you measure your days. Instead of asking, "Was I busy?" you ask, "Did I move forward?" That question changes decisions. It changes what you say yes to. It changes how you end your day. You begin to value completion over activity. Completion builds momentum. Momentum builds belief. You do not need to eliminate everything unimportant at once. Start by identifying one action that truly matters and protect time for it. Do it before distractions. Do it before excuses. Treat it as non-negotiable. Let everything else fit around it. This is how direction is established. Over time, this practice reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is always catching up. You become someone who is building something. That shift changes how you carry yourself. Confidence becomes quieter, but stronger. You trust your process because you can see it working. Busy people often feel rushed. Focused people feel steady. Steadiness is power. It allows you to stay in the game long enough to see results. When you stop confusing movement with progress, effort stops being wasted. It starts compounding. Choose depth over noise. Choose direction over activity. Choose progress over motion. And let your days reflect that choice. Chapter 8. Half-effort is one of the most subtle ways people shrink their own lives. They show up, but not fully. They begin, but they do not commit. They stay just engaged enough to feel safe, but not enough to see real change. And then they wonder why results never match their hopes. You cannot build a meaningful life on partial presence. You cannot expect full rewards from divided effort. When you take yourself seriously, you stop giving your life leftovers. Half-effort shows up quietly. It appears in rushed work, in starting tasks and not finishing them, in giving more energy to distractions than to goals, in telling yourself you are trying, when deep down, you know you are testing. Over time, this becomes a habit, and habits become identity. The problem with half-effort is not failure. It is regret. Because half-effort always leaves a question behind. What if I had actually tried? What if I had stayed with it a little longer? What if I had focused instead of drifting? Those questions weigh more than effort ever will. Full effort does not mean perfection. It means presence. When you work with attention. When you rest without escape. When you speak honestly. When you plan, you follow through. Half-effort is when your body is in one place and your mind is somewhere else. That state feels busy, but it is empty. From a psychological perspective, divided attention weakens learning and performance. The brain cannot deepen skills when it is constantly switching. Each switch resets focus and drains energy. Full attention, even for a shorter time, produces stronger results than long hours of fragmented effort. This is why showing up fully feels uncomfortable at first. It removes excuses. When you give full effort, you risk seeing your true capacity, and that can be intimidating. Some people avoid full effort not because they are lazy, but because they fear discovering their limits. It feels safer to never fully commit than to commit and fall short. But safety becomes stagnation. Growth requires risk, not reckless risk, but honest engagement. You learn who you are by using your strength, not by protecting it. Confidence is not built by avoiding effort. It is built by applying it consistently. Half-effort also affects how you see yourself. When you repeatedly hold back, your mind learns a quiet lesson. You do not fully believe in yourself. That belief leaks into everything. Doubt grows, motivation fades, pride disappears. But when you show up fully, even when no one is watching, you send a different message. You tell yourself, I can be relied on. That trust changes how you move through the world. Full effort is not about intensity all the time. It is about sincerity. Some days require energy. Other days require patience. Full effort adapts to the moment, but it never disengages. Even when you are tired, you can be present. Even when progress is slow, you can stay committed. This is where many people quit, when things become boring. Boredom is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that novelty has worn off, and discipline is being tested. The people who move forward are not immune to boredom. They simply refuse to let it decide their actions. You do not need to feel inspired to give full effort. You need to decide that your life deserves it. This applies to every area of your life. Your health does not improve with half commitment. Your relationships do not grow with half attention. Your skills do not sharpen with half learning. Your character does not deepen with half honesty. What you give consistently is what you become. Start checking in with yourself throughout the day. Ask one simple question. Am I giving this moment my full presence, or am I just doing enough to get by? If you do not like the answer, adjust. You are allowed to reset at any moment. You do not need a new week or a new year. You need a new standard. Full effort creates clarity. When you show up honestly, feedback becomes useful. You can see what works and what does not. Half effort hides truth. It creates confusion. You do not know if something failed because it was wrong or because you never really tried. Clarity saves time. When you commit fully, even mistakes move you forward. They teach you something real. They build experience. They strengthen resilience. Half effort teaches nothing. It only prolongs uncertainty. You were not made to live cautiously. You were made to engage, to build, to test yourself, to grow. Full effort is not about proving anything to others. It is about honoring your own potential. It is about closing the gap between who you are and who you know you could be. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Show up fully now, in this task, in this moment, with the energy you have, even if it is not your best day, especially then. Because the habit of full effort is not built on easy days. It is built on quiet days, hard days, days when no one claps, but you show up anyway. Half effort leads to half results. Full effort leads to change. Chapter 9. One of the quietest ways people lose confidence in themselves is not through failure, but through neglect. Not the big mistakes everyone can see. The small promises broken in private. The promise to wake up earlier. The promise to work on that skill. The promise to take care of your body. When those promises are ignored again and again, something inside weakens. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly. Trust in yourself begins to erode. Every promise you make to yourself carries weight. Your mind remembers. Your nervous system remembers. Even when you tell yourself it does not matter, your inner voice keeps score. Each time you say you will do something and do not follow through, you teach yourself a lesson. That lesson is not about the task. It is about reliability. Over time, you begin to believe your own words are flexible, optional, negotiable. And once that belief settles in, motivation becomes difficult because deep down, you do not fully trust yourself anymore. This is why confidence cannot be manufactured. Confidence is built through self-trust. And self-trust is built when your actions align with your words. When you ignore the promises you make, you create internal conflict. Part of you wants more. Another part no longer believes you will do what it takes. That tension drains energy. It creates hesitation. It creates doubt, not because you are incapable, but because your inner authority has been weakened. This is not about being harsh with yourself. It is about respect. If you would not repeatedly ignore a promise made to someone you care about, why is it acceptable to ignore the ones you make to yourself? The relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When that relationship lacks trust, everything feels unstable. Many people make promises emotionally. They promise change when they feel inspired. They promise effort when they feel frustrated. But inspiration fades, frustration passes, and the promise dissolves. This cycle creates emotional noise without progress. The solution is not to stop making promises. The solution is to make fewer promises and honor the ones you make. Awareness is the first step. Notice how often you say, "I'll do it later," or "I'll start tomorrow," or "I promise I'll change." These words are not harmless. They shape expectations. When expectations are repeatedly unmet, disappointment grows, and disappointment turns into self-doubt. When you catch yourself making a promise, pause. Ask yourself one honest question. Am I willing to follow through, even if it is inconvenient? If the answer is no, Do not promise it. Choose honesty over empty commitment. Honesty builds strength. Empty promises weaken it. When you do follow through, even in small ways, something powerful happens. You feel grounded, calm, steady. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because your inner world becomes aligned. You begin to trust your own direction. You move with less hesitation. That feeling is worth protecting. Many people wait for confidence before taking action, but confidence is the reward, not the requirement. Each kept promise is like a quiet deposit into your self-trust. Over time, the balance grows, and with it, your ability to handle bigger challenges. Ignoring promises affects how you see the future. If you do not trust yourself with small commitments, how can you fully believe in big goals? Big goals require sustained effort. Sustained effort requires self-belief, and self-belief requires evidence. That evidence comes from keeping your word. You do not need to overhaul your life in one day. Start small. Choose one promise you know you can keep. Something simple but meaningful. Then keep it, especially when you feel like skipping it. That moment, when you follow through despite resistance, is where trust is built. If you break a promise, do not spiral. Acknowledge it. Understand why it happened. Adjust. Recommit with clarity. The goal is progress, not punishment. You are building a relationship, not enforcing a sentence. Over time, you will notice your inner dialogue change. You will become more precise, more careful with your words. You will stop committing out of emotion and start committing out of intention. This reduces stress because you are no longer carrying the weight of unkept promises. People who keep promises to themselves move differently. They are not rushed. They are not scattered. They know what they said they would do, and they do it. This consistency creates a quiet strength. It shows in posture, in tone, in decisions. Ignoring promises often comes from fear. Fear of effort, fear of failure, fear of discomfort. Keeping promises does not remove fear. It teaches you how to act despite it. That skill changes everything. Life will always be uncertain. The ability to rely on yourself is what allows you to face it. When your inner voice trusts you, doubt quiets down. Anxiety eases. You stop arguing with yourself. You simply act. This simplicity is powerful. The promises you make shape the story you tell yourself about who you are. If the story says you quit easily, you begin to live that way. If the story says you follow through, your behavior rises to meet that expectation. You deserve to trust yourself. That trust is earned through honest action, repeated daily. Make your word matter again, not to impress anyone else, but to rebuild the foundation of your own strength. When you stop ignoring the promises you make, you stop undermining yourself. You become someone you can rely on, and that changes how far you are willing to go. Chapter 10. Living like your life matters is not something you do once. It is something you practice daily. Most people say they care about their life, their future, their growth. But care is not a feeling. Care is behavior. It is how you move through ordinary days when nothing dramatic is happening. It is how you treat your time when no one is watching. It is how you act when there is no pressure forcing you to try. If your life truly matters to you, it must show up in the way you live today. Not someday, not when things calm down. Today. Many people wait for a reason to care, a crisis, a deadline, a wake-up call. They need pressure to access effort. But when you only show up under pressure, you are not leading your life. You are reacting to it. That keeps you stuck in cycles where change only happens when things get bad. Living daily like you care means you stop needing urgency to behave responsibly. You do not wait for motivation to respect your time. You do not wait for consequences to take your goals seriously. You act with intention because your life deserves it, not because something is falling apart. This shift is subtle but powerful. When you care, you do not leave important things to chance. You check in, you stay consistent, you maintain what matters even when it feels boring. You understand that neglect is rarely loud. It is quiet. It happens through small delays, small excuses, small moments of avoidance that add up over time. Your health responds to care. Your mind responds to care. Your skills respond to care. Every part of your life responds to attention. And when attention is missing, things weaken. This is not punishment. It is cause and effect. What you feed grows. What you ignore fades. Living like you care also means you stop going numb. You stop drifting through your days disconnected from your own potential. You stop pretending your choices do not add up. You recognize that every decision casts a vote, and votes compound, even small ones. This does not require perfection. It requires presence. You begin to ask better questions. How am I starting my day? How am I ending it? What am I giving my best energy to? What am I tolerating that is quietly draining me? These questions are not meant to create guilt. They are meant to bring you back into responsibility. Responsibility is empowering. It reminds you that you have influence, that your life is not something that just happens to you. You are participating in it. That participation removes helplessness. It replaces it with direction. When you live like you care, your priorities become clearer. You stop overcommitting. You stop saying yes to avoid discomfort. You stop apologizing for taking yourself seriously. Your time and energy are no longer random. They are intentional. People who live this way often appear calm, not because their life is easy, but because they are no longer fighting themselves. They have accepted that effort is part of growth, that discipline is not punishment, that care is shown through repetition, not emotion. Even on difficult days, care is still possible. You may feel tired. You may feel unfocused. You may want to disconnect. But you can still do one thing that honors your life. One focused action. One honest decision. One moment of restraint instead of reaction. Care adapts to the day, but it never disappears. This is how momentum is built. Not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through daily alignment. When your actions match your values, stress decreases, doubt quiets. You walk with more purpose. You feel more present in your own life. You stop waiting for your life to begin. You realize it is already happening. Living like you care also changes how you relate to the future. You stop gambling with it. You stop assuming you can fix everything later. You begin investing now, in small, consistent ways. Those investments compound quietly. This is not about pressure. It is about respect. Respect for your time. Respect for your energy. Respect for the fact that your life, exactly as it is right now, is worth your attention. Do not underestimate the power of small care. Making your bed, preparing your meals, writing down your goals, turning off distractions to sleep better, reading instead of scrolling, following through on what you said you would do. These are not minor acts. They are signals. They tell your mind and your future who is in charge. Care is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is built in the quiet decisions you make every day. And when you live like you actually care, your life begins to reflect that decision. Not instantly, but steadily, clearly, without doubt. Chapter 11. Discomfort is not the enemy of growth. Avoidance is. Most people interpret discomfort as a signal to stop. They feel resistance, uncertainty, or strain, and assume something is wrong. So they retreat. They distract themselves. They wait for the feeling to pass. But discomfort is not a warning sign. It is a construction sign. It appears when something new is being built. When you take yourself seriously, you change how you relate to discomfort. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this feeling?" and start asking, "What is this feeling asking me to develop?" That shift is crucial. Growth always asks something of you. It asks for effort, attention, patience, and the willingness to feel unsure without collapsing. Discomfort often shows up right before skill is formed. When you learn something new, your brain is reorganizing. Old patterns are being challenged. New pathways are forming. This process is inefficient at first. It feels awkward, slow, unstable. That instability is not failure. It is adaptation. The brain must pass through discomfort to rewire itself. From a scientific perspective, this is how learning works. Neural growth happens at the edge of your ability, not in comfort. If something feels completely easy, you are not expanding. If it feels impossible, you may be overwhelming yourself. Growth lives in the narrow zone between, and that zone is uncomfortable by nature. Most people never stay there long enough. They quit too early. They label the discomfort as proof they are not good at something. But discomfort does not mean you are incapable. It means you are inexperienced. Experience is built through repetition. Repetition requires staying with the discomfort instead of escaping it. This is where discipline becomes emotional maturity. You stop running from temporary unease to protect short-term comfort. You choose long-term development instead. This choice reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids hard things and start seeing yourself as someone who can stay present through them. Staying present is powerful. When discomfort arises and you do not immediately distract yourself, something interesting happens. The sensation peaks, then passes. You realize it was not permanent. You learn that you can tolerate more than you thought. That realization builds resilience. Resilience is not toughness. It is confidence in your ability to endure without quitting. Discomfort also teaches precision. When you stay with the work, you begin to notice details. You adjust technique. You refine approach. Skill grows. And as skill grows, fear decreases. Progress removes doubt, not through reassurance, but through evidence. This is why many people stay stuck at the same level for years. They practice only when it feels comfortable. They avoid the edge where learning happens. They want growth without strain. But growth without strain is repetition, not evolution. Taking yourself seriously means reframing discomfort. You stop seeing it as something to escape and start seeing it as proof of engagement. Proof that you are not coasting. Proof that you are actively building something new. This does not mean forcing yourself recklessly. It means choosing discomfort that aligns with your goals, not random suffering. There is a difference between purposeful challenge and unnecessary struggle. Purposeful challenge stretches you. Unnecessary struggle drains you. Wisdom is knowing which discomfort to accept. You also stop dramatizing discomfort. You do not complain as much. You do not tell a story about how hard everything is. You recognize that complaining does not move your life forward. Action does. Quiet endurance builds more strength than loud frustration ever will. Another important shift happens here. When you accept discomfort as part of growth, you stop taking resistance personally. You stop thinking something is wrong with you. You understand resistance is part of the process. This reduces self-criticism. You correct yourself without cruelty. You stay engaged instead of emotionally collapsing. Over time, your threshold increases. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. What once required effort becomes habit. This is how people grow into stronger versions of themselves. Not through sudden breakthroughs, but through repeated exposure to challenge handled with composure. Discomfort also clarifies priorities. When you are willing to feel uncomfortable for the sake of growth, distractions lose their appeal. Cheap comfort stops satisfying you. You develop a taste for progress. That taste changes decisions. You choose differently because you value the long-term result more than short-term relief. You do not need to enjoy discomfort. You need to respect it. Respect it as part of the price of becoming someone more capable. Respect it as evidence that you are no longer living on autopilot. Respect it as the signal that something real is happening beneath the surface. When discomfort appears, do not rush to escape. Pause. Breathe. Stay present. Ask what is being built. Because the ability to stay with discomfort without quitting is one of the strongest predictors of success. Not talent, not luck, endurance, composure, consistent engagement. This is how growth becomes inevitable. Chapter 12. Most people do not fail because they chose the wrong direction. They fail because they waited too long to move. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. They wait for the moment when everything feels aligned and easy. But that moment rarely comes, and while they are waiting, life continues. Time moves. Opportunities pass quietly. Momentum fades. Perfect conditions do not exist. There will always be something unfinished, something uncertain, something uncomfortable. If you require certainty before action, you will remain stuck in preparation forever. Preparation feels responsible, but when it replaces action, it becomes avoidance. Taking yourself seriously means acting before you feel ready, not recklessly, intentionally. You move forward with what you know today. You test, you adjust, you learn. This is how clarity is created. Clarity does not come first. It follows movement. Every step you take provides feedback. Feedback sharpens direction. Waiting provides nothing but speculation. From a cognitive standpoint, action resolves confusion. When you stay in your head, possibilities multiply. Doubt grows. Overthinking intensifies. But when you act, even imperfectly, the mind settles. You gain real information. You see what works and what does not. That information is more valuable than endless thinking. This is why people who move appear more confident. They are not more certain. They are more experienced. Experience replaces fear with familiarity. Familiarity builds competence. Competence builds confidence. But none of that happens without movement. Waiting for perfect conditions also creates a dangerous illusion. You begin to believe that future you will be more capable than present you. That somehow, later, effort will feel easier. Discipline will appear. Motivation will stabilize. But future you is built by present actions. If you do not act now, you are not preparing a stronger version of yourself. You are reinforcing delay. Delay becomes identity. Taking action, even small action, interrupts that pattern. It proves to your mind that progress is possible without ideal circumstances. That proof matters. It changes expectations. Your brain stops waiting for permission and starts expecting follow-through. There is also an energetic principle here. Momentum responds to movement, not intention. Life responds when you engage. When you move, even imperfectly, your signal strengthens. You are no longer broadcasting hesitation. You are broadcasting commitment. That signal attracts resources, ideas, and opportunities that waiting never does. Action invites support. This does not mean forcing massive change all at once. It means refusing to remain frozen. You choose one step, one task, one decision. You move, then you reassess. This rhythm, move, adjust, move again, is how progress is sustained. People who wait often tell themselves they are being careful. But care without action is fear dressed as responsibility. True responsibility accepts uncertainty. It understands that mistakes are not proof of failure. They are proof of participation. When something does not work, you do not quit. You analyze, you adjust, you keep moving. That mindset keeps you alive to possibility. Acting before perfect conditions also builds resilience. You learn how to handle imperfection. You learn how to recover from missteps. You learn that discomfort and uncertainty are survivable. This reduces fear over time. Fear loses power when it is repeatedly faced and found manageable. Another shift occurs when you stop waiting. You stop romanticizing the future. You stop imagining that someday will feel different without effort. You start respecting the present. You recognize that today is the only place where action is possible. The future is built here or nowhere. Taking yourself seriously means refusing to outsource your life to later. Later is not a strategy. Later is a story people tell themselves to avoid responsibility. Growth does not require certainty. It requires courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement despite it. If you are stuck, do not ask yourself what the perfect next move is. Ask yourself what the smallest honest action is that moves you forward. Then take it. That action creates information. Information creates clarity. Clarity creates momentum. Momentum changes lives. Do not wait to feel ready. Move, and let readiness be built through action. Chapter 13. Your environment is never neutral. It is either supporting your growth or quietly working against it. Most people focus on willpower and motivation, but they ignore the space they live in, the tools they use, and the systems they move through every day. This is a mistake. Your environment trains you continuously. It shapes behavior without asking permission, and when it is poorly designed, it makes progress unnecessarily difficult. Taking yourself seriously means preparing your environment for follow-through. You stop relying on memory and discipline alone. You stop expecting yourself to fight friction every day. Instead, you remove small obstacles before they become excuses. You make the right actions easier and the wrong ones harder. This is not weakness. It is intelligence. From a behavioral science perspective, behavior follows cues. What is visible gets used. What is hidden gets forgotten. What is easy gets repeated. What is hard gets avoided. If your environment is filled with distraction, distraction becomes your habit. If your environment is structured for focus, focus becomes natural. This is why people with strong habits often appear disciplined without effort. Their surroundings are doing half the work. They place reminders where they cannot be ignored. They prepare tools in advance. They reduce unnecessary decisions. They shape their space so that follow-through is the default, not the exception. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the level of your systems. When your environment supports your goals, effort flows. When it does not, even strong motivation burns out. This is why so many people feel inconsistent. They are fighting their own setup. Preparing your environment does not require dramatic change. It requires awareness. Look around your daily space. What pulls your attention away? What makes distraction effortless? What creates friction when you try to focus? These are not minor details. They are silent influences. When you take yourself seriously, you begin adjusting these influences. You clean your space not for appearance, but for clarity. You organize your tools so starting is easy. You remove distractions from your immediate reach. You design your surroundings to reflect the person you are becoming, not the habits you are trying to escape. This applies beyond physical space. Your digital environment matters too. Notifications, apps, endless information streams. These are environmental inputs. When they are unmanaged, they fragment attention. Fragmented attention weakens effort. When you intentionally limit noise, your mind settles. Settled minds perform better. There is also an energetic dimension here. Your environment holds intention. Spaces carry memory. When you repeatedly work, rest, or think in a place designed for those actions, your nervous system associates that space with purpose. Focus becomes faster. Resistance decreases. You enter the state more easily. This is why ritual works. Not because it is symbolic, but because it conditions your mind and body. When you prepare your environment consistently, your system learns what comes next. It stops resisting. It cooperates. Another benefit of environmental preparation is self-respect. When you set things up to succeed, you are telling yourself, I expect follow-through. That expectation matters. It changes how you see yourself. You move from hoping you will act to assuming you will. Preparation also reduces excuses. When everything you need is ready, avoidance becomes obvious. You can no longer blame circumstances. This is not meant to create pressure. It creates clarity. Clarity allows adjustment. You can see what needs to change instead of guessing. You do not need to control everything. You need to control what you can. Start with one small adjustment. Place reminders where you will see them. Prepare your workspace before you need it. Remove one distraction from your immediate environment. These changes compound. They make consistency easier, and consistency builds momentum. When your environment supports your goals, discipline feels lighter. You are no longer swimming against the current. You are moving with it. Taking yourself seriously means designing your life for success, not hoping it happens through effort alone. Prepare your environment and let it work for you instead of against you. Chapter 14. Raising your standards does not mean becoming harsh with yourself. It means becoming honest. Most people confuse standards with pressure. They imagine standards as rigid rules or constant self-criticism, so they avoid them. They lower expectations. They tolerate behaviors they know are holding them back. And over time, tolerance becomes identity. Taking yourself seriously means you stop tolerating your own disrespect, not with anger, not with shame, with clarity. Standards are simply the boundaries you set around your behavior. They define what is acceptable and what is not. When standards are low, almost anything passes. When standards are clear, your actions begin to align with who you want to become. This is not about being perfect. It is about being consistent. High standards do not demand flawlessness. They demand correction. When you fall short, you notice it. You adjust. You return to alignment without drama. Low standards excuse everything. High standards guide improvement. From a psychological perspective, standards shape outcomes because they shape attention. When you expect more from yourself, you notice when you cut corners. When you expect less, you stop noticing altogether. Awareness is the difference, and awareness is the gateway to growth. Many people avoid standards because they fear self-judgment. But the absence of standards does not remove judgment. It replaces it with quiet disappointment. You may avoid criticism in the moment, but you carry dissatisfaction over time. That dissatisfaction erodes confidence far more than honest correction ever will. Raising your standards actually reduces inner conflict. When you know what you expect from yourself, decisions become easier. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop asking, "Should I do this?" You already know the answer. That clarity saves energy. Standards also create self-respect. When you hold yourself to a level of behavior and follow through, you trust yourself more. You feel grounded. You feel solid. Not because you are perfect, but because you are aligned. Alignment is calm. Misalignment is noisy. This is why people with clear standards often feel stable. They are not constantly redeciding who they are. Their actions reflect their values. That consistency builds inner strength. Raising standards does not mean becoming rigid. Flexibility still exists. Rest still exists. Compassion still exists. But they are intentional, not excuses. You rest because it supports growth, not because you are avoiding effort. You slow down to recover, not to escape. Another important shift happens when standards rise. You stop tolerating environments, habits, and conversations that drain you, not from superiority, but from self-respect. You realize that what you allow shapes you, and you decide to protect your direction. This includes how you speak to yourself. You stop using language that undermines you. You stop calling yourself broken or lazy. You correct behavior without attacking identity. You hold standards without cruelty. This balance is powerful. It keeps progress clean and sustainable. Standards also sharpen focus. When you know what level of effort is acceptable, you stop drifting. You show up more fully. You finish what you start. You do not need external pressure because your internal expectations are clear. This is how momentum is built. Not through intensity, but through consistency. You do not need to raise every standard at once. Choose one area where you know you have been tolerating less than you are capable of. Decide what acceptable behavior looks like there. Then practice returning to that standard, calmly, repeatedly. Over time, that practice reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who lets things slide. You become someone who follows through. That shift changes confidence. Confidence is not loud. It is knowing you will correct yourself when you drift. Raising your standards is an act of self-respect. It says, "My life has weight. My actions matter." And when you live that way, results change, not because you demand them, but because your behavior supports them. Hold standards, without cruelty, without drama, just clarity. Chapter 15. There is a version of effort that looks impressive, and a version that actually builds power. Impressive effort is loud. It seeks recognition. It waits for validation. It performs when someone is watching and relaxes when the attention disappears. Real effort is quieter. It does not announce itself. It shows up consistently, especially when no one is there to notice. Taking yourself seriously means choosing effort, even when nobody sees. This is one of the clearest lines between people who talk about growth and people who live it. When no one is watching, when there is no deadline, no applause, no pressure, what you do in those moments defines you. Not because those moments are special, but because they are honest. They reveal your true standard. Most of the decisions that shape your life will never be visible to anyone else. They will not be posted. They will not be praised. They will not be acknowledged. But they will compound. Quietly. Relentlessly. This is where real confidence is built, not from recognition, but from self-respect. Many people struggle here because effort without visibility can feel pointless. You might ask yourself, does this even matter? And the answer is yes, especially then. Effort given without an audience trains discipline at the deepest level. It removes performance from the equation. You are no longer doing things to be seen. You are doing them because they align with who you are becoming. From a psychological perspective, private effort strengthens internal motivation. When your actions are not tied to external reward, your sense of agency grows. You begin to act from identity instead of approval. That shift is powerful. It makes your behavior more stable. You do not need encouragement to continue. You already decided. This is also where integrity is formed. Integrity is not about morality. It is about consistency between who you say you are and how you act when there are no consequences. When your private behavior matches your public values, inner conflict disappears. You feel grounded. You trust yourself. Effort without witnesses also sharpens focus. There is no performance layer, no distraction, just the work. This depth allows skills to form faster. It allows understanding to deepen. It creates mastery. Most people never reach this stage because they stop when the novelty fades. They need stimulation to continue. But mastery requires repetition in silence. This is why so many successful people describe long periods of invisible work. Early mornings, quiet evenings, repetition without recognition. These periods are not glamorous, but they are formative. They build capacity. They prepare you for opportunities that only appear when you are ready. Choosing effort when nobody sees also changes how you handle pressure later. When the stakes are higher, you are not overwhelmed. You have trained yourself to show up without external push. You do not panic when attention arrives because your habits were built without it. You are steady. This kind of effort builds a different type of confidence. Not the confidence that comes from praise, but the confidence that comes from proof. You know what you can handle because you have handled it before. Quietly, repeatedly, without shortcuts. It also frees you from comparison. When your effort is internal, you stop measuring yourself against others. You stop worrying about pace. You focus on process. That focus keeps motivation clean. Comparison fades when your standards are personal. There will be days when effort feels invisible. Days when you wonder if it is worth it. Days when progress seems slow. These are the moments that test seriousness. Anyone can act committed when results are obvious. Few stay committed when the outcome is still far away. Those who do are the ones who eventually stand out. Not because they tried to, but because their consistency made it unavoidable. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. Quiet effort is often the strongest kind because it is deliberate. It is not emotional. It is a decision you have made and continue to honor. Build the habit of doing the hard thing, even when you could get away with not doing it. Finish the task even if no one will check. Prepare even if no one will notice. Stay focused even if there is no immediate reward. These habits sharpen you. They make you dependable. They make you proud. Not because others see you, but because you see yourself. If you want to build something real, release the need to be seen. Let your work speak for you. Let your growth do the talking. Trust that the effort you put in now, even in silence, will echo later in the results you create. That is how people rise. Not with noise, but with discipline, consistency, and effort that does not ask for attention, yet always delivers results. Your life does not change when you learn something new. It changes when you decide to live differently. Everything in this audiobook points to one simple truth. The moment you stop treating your life casually, it begins to move. Not when conditions improve, not when motivation arrives, not when someone else believes in you. The shift happens when you do. Taking yourself seriously is not a personality trait. It is a daily practice. It is choosing decision over delay, structure over mood, focus over noise, presence over half-effort, integrity over excuses. When you take yourself seriously, your actions align. Your time reflects your values. Your promises start to matter again. And when your word carries weight, confidence no longer needs to be forced. It grows naturally from trust. You trust yourself because you show up. You believe in yourself because you follow through. You feel grounded because your actions match who you say you are. This is not about becoming extreme. It is about becoming sincere. Small, sincere effort repeated daily reshapes identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. And outcomes over time shape your entire life. Where you place your attention, energy organizes. Reality does not respond to wishes. It responds to standards. Not to what you hope for, but to what you honor consistently. When you honor your time, time gains meaning. When you honor your word, inner authority strengthens. When you honor effort, progress compounds. You stop drifting. You stop postponing. You stop waiting to feel ready. This path does not require dramatic change. It requires one decision today, one promise you keep, one focused hour, one distraction you refuse, one action taken with full presence. That is enough to change direction. Do not wait for later. Later is not a strategy. Later is where potential fades quietly. Choose today. Choose to show up fully. Choose to keep your word. Choose to live like your life counts. Because it does. The day you stop living casually is the day your life begins to move with purpose. If something you heard today shifted your perspective, help it reach one more person who's ready for change. And if you want to keep growing with us, subscribe. This space will be here when you need it.